Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar about cognitive services. My name is Jan Tielens. I'm a technical evangelist at Microsoft over here in Belgium. First thing that I wanted to do is ask you guys if you can hear me loud and clearly, and if you can see, well, the first slide that I'm presenting. You can type OK or something like that in the chat window. That would be great for me to know that everything is OK for you guys. Super, I see yes, OK. Thanks for that. Another practical thing that I wanted to mention, if you have any issues during the call, feel free to write a small message in the chat window as well. There should be a colleague of me joining later in this call, and he can help you out. If you have any questions about the content of this call, about cognitive services itself, I saved some time at the end of my presentation to answer your questions, so you can type them by then in the chat window, or if you have a microphone, you can unmute yourself at that point in time as well, and actually ask your question if that's the thing that you want to do. Okay, let's get started with the actual presentation. I've got a couple of slides that I've prepared, not too many, because most of the stuff I just want to show you and explain to you during a couple of demonstrations. I'm going to show you code, websites, and so forth, so you can get started very quickly yourself. But first thing that I wanted to do is do a little bit of positioning around cognitive services and maybe more in general how we at Microsoft look at artificial intelligence, or intelligence for short, or machine learning, or everything that's related to that. And I think it's interesting to understand that with just intelligence, with just machine learning, let's say, you cannot do anything. It is actually part of a bigger scenario. And the scenario typically goes as follows. You probably start off with some data being collected. On that data, you're going to apply intelligence. And as a result, you typically want to deliver some kind of an experience to your customer, to your end user, he or she that should be using the thing that you've just built. So intelligence, machine learning is just sitting in the middle of that. And to make this a bit more concrete, I thought it would be useful to start off with two small examples of companies that are actually doing this in real products that are live today. First example that I think is pretty nice is a company that you probably know, Uber, you know, the taxi company that doesn't have any taxis. What they have built in quite recently in their application is the option for a customer to check if the driver that is actually driving the car is really the person that he or she is pretending to be. And that's of course important for security, that you don't just jump into a car that is not driven by a known Uber driver. How are they doing that? Well, they're making use of facial recognition. So the customer can actually take a picture of the driver, and that is being matched with records that are stored at Uber in the Uber system, and the application is actually going to tell you, well, yes, that is indeed the person that is driving your car, or no, and then maybe it's best to get out. Another example of that scenario, and by the way, the data part over here, of course, was the picture that was being taken by the customer of Uber, including the set of known Uber drivers, all those pictures stored in the Uber system. The intelligence was the facial recognition, and the experience, of course, was to give that as an opportunity to check the driver ID in the application of Uber. Second example that I wanted to give you is a thing that we are doing at Microsoft ourselves. There's a research project called Seeing AI, which quite recently also became like a real application in the iOS App Store. And the application is meant for the visual impaired. So what we did at Microsoft is created a smartphone application that can be used by people that are visually impaired. And the application can tell the persons that are using it what is being detected by taking some pictures of the environment. So the application can tell, for example, the visually impaired person, you're now in a street, and there are cars driving, something like that. Or over here, there's like a menu of a restaurant. Do you want to read it aloud? That's the thing that the application can do. Or we see over there a person, and we recognize that person as your friend, for example. Just a couple of scenarios that the application can do. In this scenario, of course, the data is once again the picture that is being taken by the smartphone application. The intelligence is, well, the recognition that is being done. It's by making use of a vision API. We will come back to that later. And the scenario, of course, is, well, to give that as functionality to the visually impaired person. Now, if you think about those two scenarios, and if you're a developer and you would be asked like 2 or 3 years ago to actually create something like that, to write code to accomplish that, I think you and myself for sure would think at that time, well, that is impossible. That is such a difficult task to develop, a difficult code to write. I can never do it. Just imagine having to write code to analyze pictures and tell what is on a picture, or to do OCR, optical character recognition, to actually read text, or to do things such as text-to-speech, or even more difficult speech-to-text and so forth. A couple of years ago, those were very, very complex tasks and nearly impossible to accomplish in a good way. With the improvements that we have been seeing in the area of machine learning, nowadays those tasks are not that difficult anymore to accomplish. They can be accomplished. Typical scenario that you would need to go through to actually do, for example, that vision API, recognizing what is on pictures. You probably want to start off with a huge set of training data that are annotated pictures, like a picture of cars and streets and persons, whatever you would like to recognize. Use that training set to actually build up your knowledge to train an algorithm. And once you're happy with the trained algorithm, expose that algorithm as an API so you can actually use it in your own application. And that's typically the flow that you would need to go through if you're going to build your own machine learning solution. Now, what we have been doing at Microsoft, besides that core machine learning functionality that I just described, let's say, for some very common scenarios, we have done all that work for you. What we have been doing is we have been building some APIs for very common machine learning scenarios. So you can use them without having to build your own training set, without having to train your algorithm and expose your algorithm as an API. That's the thing that Microsoft has been doing for you. At this point in time, we've got a bunch of APIs that are available, and we are calling them the Microsoft Cognitive Services. What are the Microsoft Cognitive Services? Well, collection of those APIs that you can just use as a customer or a partner from Microsoft. As I mentioned, there are quite a few of them, and to organize them a little bit, we've put them in some categories, and you can see those categories on the slide over here. First of all, we've got the vision category, which is related to, detecting what is on pictures or what is on video streams. I will come back later on and explain to you in more detail what are the APIs that you can actually find over there. Then we got the speech API, which is the API which are the APIs that are going to allow you to do, for example, speech to text, transcribing spoken words, or the other way around, text to speech, speaking written text. And we can also do some fancy stuff like speaker recognition. We can analyze voices, and then we can actually match a voice with a known person. More on that later on as well. Then we've got the third category called language, which is pretty much everything related to NLP, natural language processing. And so we've got stuff like intent detection, we've got entity extraction, we've got sentiment analytics, text analytics, and so forth. Once again, I will explain later on and give some concrete examples when we're going to talk about those language APIs. Then the fourth category is related to knowledge, which is typically used in, let's say, scientific academia scenarios where you would like to, for example, make connections between scientific articles. You would like to look for articles and so forth. Then we've got the search APIs, which are based on Bing or a search engine, will allow you to search for content on the web, like web pages, but also images, to things like auto-suggest, look in news and so forth. And then we've got the final category called labs, which are the APIs that are not yet completely finished. The list of APIs is constantly being improved, and there are more APIs being added like every month, sometimes even quicker. And for the APIs that we're still working on, but we would also already expose to our customers to give them a feeling of what we are building ourselves, we've got the labs category. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples what you can find over there at the end of my presentation. Now, for the APIs that I just explained, you can use them without any configuration, without any training, without doing any difficult stuff. Although we do have a couple of APIs that can be customized. Maybe a good example of such a customizable API is the Vision API. Imagine that I would send a picture of a water bottle, let's say spa plain water, to the Vision API. The Vision API probably is going to tell me, yeah, hey, that's a bottle of water. If I would send another picture, once again of a bottle of water, but this time maybe sparkling spa, then the Vision API probably would tell me again it's a bottle of water. If it's for you important to be able to make a distinction between a photo of sparkling water and a photo of still water, then you can make use of the custom Vision API. So extend the training set of data that we got at Microsoft with your own pictures of your products, of the things that you want to recognize, so you can recognize your own custom products, for example. I'm going to give you an example of that later on as well. Same thing goes for speech and language, and we will dive a bit deeper later on. So for now, important to know, we've got a bunch of APIs that you can use without any additional configuration or training, most of them, and there are a couple of specialized ones that can be trained with your own knowledge, let's say. Why would you be using Microsoft Cognitive Services? Well, I think they're very easy to use. Every API is basically a REST API, so you can do a plain HTTP GET or POST to the thing and get a result back. So no difficult things to install, just HTTP calls and you're good to go. The cognitive services are very flexible. Why is that? Well, we've got a bunch of SDKs built around them. If you don't want to write the REST calls yourself, we've got SDKs for C#, for Node, for Python, for mobile platforms as well, making it even easier to use them. And I'm going to give you some examples of the plain REST calls as well as the SDKs later on as well. And finally, well, the cognitive services, they're really being tested and built by the experts that we've got at Microsoft. We're quite serious about the stuff that we're building, and everything related to machine learning, artificial intelligence, it's really key. It's important for Microsoft. Cool. Now that we've got like the quick intro, the next thing that I wanted to do with you guys is quickly go over every category of the APIs that we've got. And I'm going to give you some real examples by writing code, by showing you some websites about them. And let's start off by talking about the Vision API. One of the first things that I want to show you is the thing that we call the Computer Vision API. And the scenario is very basic. You send a picture to the API and we can tell you what is on the picture. Like we can describe and give a description of what is being displayed on that picture. We can go a bit further than that, well, plain stuff. What we can do is we can also tell you, for example, when people are being detected and when faces of people are being detected, we can give you some metadata about those people, like, for example, the age of a person, the gender of a person, and so forth. And we can go even one step further. We can also detect emotions based on pictures of faces. So if a person is happy or sad, angry, has disgust and so forth, can also be detected in those APIs. So instead of just talking about those slides, let me share my screen and jump into a couple of demos. So in a couple of seconds, you should be seeing my desktop, or basically my Skype window. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to Visual Studio because the first example that I want to show you is a quick Windows application. Now, do know that the APIs can be used from any platform, and I will show you other languages and types of platforms later on. But let's start off with the Windows application. So I'm really going to start from scratch to show you how easy it is to get going. So in Visual Studio, quickly building a new Windows app. And when this Windows app is created, I'm going to add a reference to the SDK of the Vision API. And I'm going to do that by making use of NuGet. For the people that are not that familiar with building applications for Windows, NuGet is like our package manager. Like you've got NPM, for example, for Node. We've got NuGet for Windows. I see there's a message in the chat window. Let's, okay, no issues. Let's continue. So let's add the Vision API. Click install. Then the DLLs, the assemblies are being downloaded, so we can get going. So far so good. I'm really quickly going to build a small user interface. And I'm going to give you a really simple scenario. I'm going to build a user interface where people can just type, let's say, the URL of a picture. Click on a button, and then we will send that picture to the Vision API, and we can display the result in a basic text box at the bottom. So let's very quickly build that user interface. You will notice straight away I'm not that good of a UI designer, but bear with me. Let's put a text box over here. Let's grab a button, let's put it over there, and then let's grab a text block so we can show the result somewhere over here. Let's make it a bit bigger. Let's give our text box a name. Let's say the URL is the name. The text block will be named TB. And let's write some code which should be executed when the user is going to click on the button. I already added, remember, cognitive services as a reference. So how can I start using it? Well, first thing that I need to do is I need to create for the Vision API a Vision service client. And I need to do that by passing two parameters in the constructor. First parameter that you need to pass in the constructor is like your subscription key. Why do we need your subscription key? Well, that is actually how we are going to bill you. The Vision APIs is not a free service. If you use it professionally, you actually have to pay Microsoft for the usage that you've got. And to be able to track how much that you've consumed, you need to fill out your subscription ID. How do you get such a subscription ID? Well, cognitive services is a part of Azure. So what you need to do is you need to navigate to your Azure subscription. And if you don't have an Azure subscription yet, no worries, at the end of my presentation I will tell you how you can get one for free for the hackathon, I think ideal. And what you need to do over there is you need to create a new cognitive service. You need to give the thing a name, and you need to select what kind of service you would like to use. We are going to make use of the Vision API from Western Europe. Notice that we've got a bunch of data centers where you can consume this this service. makes sense to be close to where your service is being used. I'm from Belgium, so I'm going to pick Western Europe. Then quite important, you can select the pricing tier. For the Vision APIs, we've got 2 pricing tiers, either the free one, which is not going to cost you any money, gives you 5,000 calls per month for free, so 5,000 image recognitions for free, or you can go for the paying one. For my demo, let's go for the paying one. Let's put it in a resource group and click create. What that is going to do, it's going to create that service in your Azure subscription, and when it's done, you see it is being provisioned as we speak. When it's done, you can go here and you can access, well, your subscription keys. It's basically like a password that is being generated. Copy it to the clipboard, go back to your code and paste it over here. The second thing that you need to pass in the Vision Service Client and the constructor as a parameter is, well, the location where you're using the API, and you can grab that endpoint over here. That's this one. Notice it is including West Europe. That's the location where I provisioned this thing. Cool. Now what we can do is we can say, hey, client.analyze image async, and we can pass a URL that we want to analyze. That will be the URL entered in the text box. Remember, I have got a text box in my user interface. And the second parameter that we need to provide is actually telling the Vision API what kind of analyzing you want to do. For example, you can do the description that I talked about. How do you pass that? Well, we are going to create a new Microsoft Project Oxford Vision visual feature array like this, and we're going to tell the API we would like to have a description. So for the picture on this URL, we would like to get the description. We get the result back. It's an asynchronous call, so I'm going to use an await, and I need to make this method as a consequent async as well. And now we've got the result. We can say the text block.text is equal to my result dot description. I'm going to grab the first caption of the description. Okay, this looks like it might work. Let's hit the play button to start the application. And while we wait for the application to start the first time, let me quickly check.
Yeah, and there's just one question whilst you're waiting, which is that are face recognition APIs then linked to Active Directory and facial image stored in Active Directory?
No, they can be, but by default they are not. So you build up your own set of known persons by uploading those pictures to Azure. You can do that through the API. So it's not required to make use of Active Directory or anything like that to make use of the APIs. Okay, cool. Thanks for that question. In the meanwhile, my fantastic Windows application has started. Remember, we need to fill out the URL of a picture in the text box. Click on the button, and then we will see over here the description of what is on the picture. Let's look for an interesting picture on the internet. What should we be looking for? Let's say computer. Just searching for an image on the internet. Okay, this looks like a picture of the computer. Let me grab the URL of this image. In my Windows application, paste the URL, click the button. Behind the scenes, we're making a call to the API. And as you can see, the description that we get back is a desktop computer sitting on a desk with a monitor, keyboard and mouse. And when we look at the picture, well, it's actually pretty much indeed what we are seeing. Maybe let's try one more. Say Procter & Gamble products. Let's see if I can find an interesting picture over there. Let's use this picture. wondering what this will be recognized, I'm pasting the URL once again. Click on the button, and the description of that is a bunch of items that are on a table, which is once again a pretty good description. One more thing that I want to show you is what happens or what we can do when we've got people in the picture. Let me look for a picture of some Microsoft people. Let's use this one. Just a bunch of random persons, I think. Might be colleagues of me. It's not important for this one. Pasting the URL. Let's click on the button and we will see the description of that picture is a group of people posing for the camera. And once again, well, it's pretty accurate of what we're seeing. Now, remember, in the beginning I explained to you, if you've got faces on pictures, you can do much more interesting stuff. So let me jump back to my code. And remember that you can specify when you call analyze image as a function, you can specify what you would like to analyze. And I'm going to analyze faces as well. Okay, so I just add that as an additional parameter. And I'm going to switch back to my user interface. And to that user interface, add a list box as well. And let's call, sorry, a list view. Let's call that LV. And go back to the code. So what I can do now is once we get the results, we are still displaying the description, but we're going to do a for each face in my results dot faces. And we're going to say for every result, for every face that we detect, we're going to add an item to our list view. And let's say for the face, we are going to display the age. Let's say age. And we're also going to display the gender. Okay. So far so good. Let me start the application again so I can show you the result. And let me check. I still have that picture of the Microsoft people. And I'm going to paste it. Let's click the button. We still have the description, and then you can see that we've got like 3 recognized persons, a female person of 36, a male person of 30, and another male person of 30. Once again, if we check those, if we check that picture, well, we can see that recognition is actually pretty okay. For the fun of it, we could try some other pictures. Let's see if I can find a nice one. Earlier today, I found a picture of the founders of Microsoft, how they are looking today. Where is it? And that was a pretty fun one. Can't find it anymore. Well, let's go for this one. Should be okay. Ah, crap. Sorry. It's in the picture that is hidden behind the website. It's probably not good. Come on, Bill, where are you? Maybe we can use this one. Yeah, there we go. Go to my application. I did a small mistake in my code. You can see that 2 items are added, person of 44 and a person of 57. I didn't clean up the stuff that was already in my list view. And the fun thing is, our Vision API even recognizes Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer, and they're posing for the camera. which is actually a pretty good result. Cool. So far for the demonstration of the Vision API. Let me quickly check if there's a question. Question is, can we pick ethnically diverse pictures? I do think so. I haven't tried, or I don't have like a picture ready, but feel free to try it yourself. What you can do is you can navigate to Microsoft Cognitive Services, the website I mean, and if you go over there to the Vision API, you can click on the Computer Vision API, and you can upload your own picture over there, and we will actually tell you what is being recognized. And you can do the same thing for the Vision API, the Face API over here as well, where you can see the stuff that we can detect in pictures that have faces, like the emotions and so forth, the similarity of faces. See over here, we can even detect the hair colors, if a person is wearing glasses, gender, the emotions that are being exposed, and so forth. Okay. Cool. Let me switch back to my slides. Before I do that, there's one additional thing that I wanted to show you. The APIs that I've been showing you at this point in time, as you noticed, they work without any additional training. There is, however, also a custom Vision API that you can make use of, which you can use if you train that API a little bit more. And I did a little bit of preparation. I went to the Custom Vision API website and I uploaded a small sample set of photos. I'm like a hobby photographer, so I like cameras. So what I did is I uploaded cameras and annotated pictures of cameras, and I uploaded like 6 pictures of Canon cameras, and I've got 10 pictures of Leica cameras. That's the only thing that I did. I uploaded those pictures, I trained my data set, and now I've got an API that can actually tell me, if I send a picture to it, what brand of camera it is. For now, I can only recognize Canon and Leica, but let me look for a picture of a nice Leica camera, the M10, for example. Let's go for this one. Grab the URL, and go back to this website, enter the URL, and the API is now analyzing the picture, and with 99.9% confidence, the API has said, well, this is indeed a Leica camera. And if you think about it, it's pretty impressive. By just uploading 16 pictures, we now have an API that can make a distinction between those two camera brands. Once again, if you would have to build that yourself as a developer some time ago, that would be a task that was nearly impossible. And now it's very, very accessible. Okay, so far so good. Let me switch back to my presentation. The next set of APIs that I want to talk about are the APIs that are related to speech. Probably the easiest thing to do is, once again, go to the website of Cognitive Services and jump into the speech APIs. And what do we have over there? Well, we've got an API that's called the Bing Speech API, which we can test through the website. And if you go to the website, what you can do is you can actually see it live transcribing it's transcribing audio to text. So when I click on the button Start Recording, actually everything that I'm saying over here will be transcribed as you're watching it, which I think is going pretty well. And the service is doing a pretty good job. Pretty cool. One thing that you can also find over here is text-to-speech, which unfortunately I cannot show you in this Skype meeting well, I can type over here test 1, 2, 3. If I click play, I'm actually hearing it through my, but it's not being sent to you in the Skype conversation. And so if you want to try it out yourself, go to that website. What else can we find in the speech API? We also have a thing that's called speaker recognition, where you can actually identify persons based on their voice. And to be able to do that, of course, you first need to provide some samples of your known persons, and then you can start recognizing those persons, which is also pretty cool. Now, to give you a real example of an application that you could be building with those APIs, I'm going to make use of a sample that we have created at Microsoft, which is called the Intelligent Kiosk. It's a Windows example, which is completely open source. If you would like to see the source code, you can go to GitHub and grab it. And let me go to the demo section over here. And what I can do is I can show you, for example, over here the Face API Explorer, which is going to make use of my webcam. And what I can do is I can click on Take Picture. And then you can see that my face is being recognized. You can see that, well, this thing tells me that I'm 48. I'm not very happy with that one. I'm going to blame the bad light situation that I've got over here in my home. And you can see that it actually recognized me as a person called Jan. You might be wondering, why is that possible? Well, I did a little bit of preparation. I uploaded myself as a known person in my data set, and now it can recognize myself, and it can recognize a couple of family members. My 2 daughters, I uploaded some pictures as well. To prove that to you, I can show you another demonstration. Let me show you, for example, the where is it? The greeting kiosk. Once again, using my webcam, it will recognize the persons that are standing in front of the webcam. I don't have my daughters with me at this point in time, but I'm going to make use of some photos that I've got on my cell phone. Just a second, I'm looking them up as we speak. So over here, I've got a picture of my daughter. And as you can see, if I hold it in front of the camera, welcome back, Fran, that is being displayed. I've got 2 daughters, so if I put a picture of them, both of them, you can see indeed that both of them are being recognized as Fran and Liz. Some other demo that I wanted to show you, which I think is pretty cool, is the same application called Real-Time Crowd Insights. The idea is when you're delivering a presentation, you point the camera towards your audience, and while you're delivering the presentation, you actually see in a graph if your audience is happy, if they're paying attention, what are the demographics of your audience, and so forth. So as you can see now, I'm being recognized and my emotion is neutral. If we'll try to look happy, you can see indeed that I'm being recognized as being happy. And if I put the pictures of my daughters over there as well, you can see that they both should be recognized as female persons, age 8 and 6. And you can see the emotions being detected correspondingly as well. Final example of a scenario that I wanted to show you is one that we created. It's called the real-time driver monitoring. The idea is that you put a camera in front of a truck driver, and while he's driving his truck, we're going to analyze things that he or she is being doing. For example, I can analyze my head pose, I can analyze my mouth aperture, the opening of my mouth. So if I go like this, you can see the charts being adjusted. You also notice that we've got the eye aperture. So if I start closing my eyes, pretending to fall asleep, you can see that some warning signs are being displayed. And also if I will be using my phone behind the steering wheel, you can see that the distraction is being displayed. See that those red lines, that's because we are detecting that the driver is making a phone call. You can actually see the frames that we detected that are causing this alert to being sent. So quite some interesting stuff, some cool things that you can accomplish by throwing those APIs together. Cool. Let me turn back to my slides and continue. Because the next set of APIs are related to language, and they're also well, pretty interesting to be used. If you are building, for example, chatbots, if you're building computer applications that should allow people to interact with your computer system using natural speech, natural language, I actually have to say. Pretty obvious stuff. We've got a spell checker API built in. That is not that exciting. We've got a translator API, not that exciting. But we do have some other very interesting APIs. For example, the linguistic analysis API. Let me show you that one. If I go back to the Cognitive Services website, go to the text, sorry, not this one, the linguistic analysis API. I can type a small sentence over here, click submit, and then you will notice that my sentence is being deconstructed in like verbs and other things that are being recognized. So if I type, for example, this is a small but interesting test, and you can see that, well, that group of words is being grouped together because a small but interesting test is actually one of the concepts that this sentence is talking about. So you can really analyze the things that are being sent as text to this API. Now, another API that I quickly wanted to show you, if I go back, is the language API for text analytics. So what we can do over there is we can send sentences to that API. And the API is going to tell you, for example, the key phrase, like what was this sentence about? And it's also going to detect the language and the sentiment. So if it's like a positive message or a negative message and so forth. I want to create a very quick application that actually shows you how you can make use of this API in real life. And in my previous code example, I used C#. So now maybe let's use Node. I'm very quickly going to create an empty Node application. There we go. This is my code editor, and I'm going to create a new Node file, a JavaScript file. And to speed up things, I'm very quickly going to grab some sample code. There we go. What is this sample code going to do? Well, first we're going to declare some variables. We're going to connect to the text analytics API using my subscription. And the interesting thing is going to happen over here. For example, we are going to make use of a function that we created, get languages, for an array of documents. And you can see in this array, I've got like 4 sentences in different languages: English, Spanish, I think Chinese, and then in Dutch. What is the get language function going to do? It's just going to send with a plain HTTP call those sentences to the languages API, and when we get the result, we just dump the JSON that we get as a result in the console. So if I start this application, we already should see the result over here. The JSON that you see is the result. If I show my screen like this, the first sentence is indeed detected as English. The second sentence is detected as Spanish. The third sentence is indeed Chinese. And the fourth language that we detected was Dutch. So we can detect language based on text fragments. What else can we do? I'm quickly going to grab some other sample documents. What else can we do? So my sample documents contain 3 sentences. Procter & Gamble is really a great company to work for. Ariel really ruined my t-shirt. And then in Dutch, pampers zijn duur. Pampers are expensive. And you can already guess what I'm trying to show you. We're going to make use of text analytics to get sentiment out of those sentences. So I'm going to change my code a little bit. I'm going to say I'm not going to make use of languages, but let me grab the correct API. I'm going to make use of sentiment. The URL I should hit is sentiment. And if I start this application, you will actually see the result once again. These are my sentences. And you can see the first sentence over here is getting a score of 0.99. It's a percentage that indicates the sentiment. 100% being 1 would be very, very positive. 0 would be very negative. So this is indeed a very positive sentence. The score for the second sentence is 0.00. That's a very negative sentence. And then the score for sentence number 3, pampers are expensive, it's like somewhere in the middle. So it's that easy to get sentiment out of sentences, which would be great to analyze what is being mentioned about your brands, about your products on social media, for example. All built into our text APIs, language APIs, I have to say. Okay. Let me switch once again to my presentation and continue. What else do we have in the language APIs? A very interesting one at the left bottom, language understanding intelligence service. It's actually an API that is going to allow you to build up a language model and to do things like intent detection, like trying to get intents out of commands, for example, like make an order or get help or do a specific action. And that is typically being used in chatbot scenarios. Quite interesting nowadays. For the people that were in Nick's session about building chatbots yesterday, Nick spent quite some time talking about that API as well. Okay. Let's continue with the knowledge APIs. I don't think they are that relevant in the context of the challenges that you got in the hackathon for Procter & Gamble. We do have a recommendations API. We do have a knowledge exploration service that is going to allow you to organize and structure data and get some insights out of them. Maybe one interesting to check out if you're building a chatbot, and that's at the bottom right. It's our Q&A maker, which is a really easy way based on a set of questions and answers. Typically, your frequently asked questions document. Get over there an API that can do intent detection based on those questions and build very quickly a chatbot. Final set of APIs related to search. You can search through Bing on the web. You can do image search, video search. You can also make use of a custom search, for example, to get results out of your own website. And we've got the auto-suggest API, typically that you would use if you allow people to start entering text in a text box and you want to do stuff like type ahead and so forth. So if you have scenarios related to searching for stuff on the internet, these are the APIs that you probably would like to make use of. And then remember, we've got some APIs in cognitive services that are not yet completely finished, and they are in the labs section. And we've got a bunch of them at this point in time, like 6. For example, we've got Project Prague, which is obviously still a code name. Which is an API that will help you to do gesture-based detections. So if you're making signs with your hands, for example, to do specific actions, that API is going to help you. We've got, for example, Project Johannesburg, who is going to help you with planning optimized routes for customers, for deliveries, that kind of stuff. Another interesting one to see what's going on is Project Wollongong, I think, how that's pronounced like that, at the bottom right, which is going to allow you to score location attractiveness. For example, if you want to open up a new store and you say there is a store, and then the API is going to see how close it is to major roads, what the sentiment is about that location and so forth, by grabbing a bunch of public data sources. If you want to make use of that one, that is currently only available for data in the United States, so you cannot apply it to Belgium for now. Cool. So far for the set of APIs that I wanted to discuss with you, a couple of things to get you started. If you want to get started, over here you can find the documentation that I also showed in my demonstrations. For example, links to the client SDKs, to sample code of the stuff that I showed you. Remember, if you want to make use of the cognitive services, you need to have an Azure subscription. If you don't have an Azure subscription yet, you can start a free trial using the URL at the bottom of the slide, aka.ms/InQbet which is going to give you access to a free credit of $200 that you can make use of in Azure to do stuff in this hackathon. That's a great way to get started. And the final thing that I wanted to mention, we are running 2 more additional webinars for this hackathon later this week. On Friday, Nick, my colleague, is going to talk about more advanced machine learning scenarios with Machine Learning Studio and the Cognitive Toolkit, so doing custom machine learning. If, for example, cognitive services is not sufficient. And on Thursday, I'm running myself a webinar around the Internet of Things and the stuff that we have to offer at Microsoft to get you going, both from the cloud point of view as well as the device point of view to understand IoT. Okay, so now it is still, I think, like 5 minutes time for questions. I'm going to open up the chat window to see if there are any questions. How will these cognitive services be integrated into Microsoft products, for example, Azure on one end, Power BI on the other end? It's a very good remark that you've got over there. We are actively using our own cognitive services for products that we are building. And we've got some pretty good examples for that. For example, if you take a look at Microsoft Dynamics, which is like a business solution. We are using, for example, over there, the sentiment analytics to detect what is being expressed about your brand, about your product on social media. So indeed, we are building those things into our own products. The APIs that we have been talking about are, let's say, the base on top, the base for that. You can build them into your own applications. I see Bruno is typing, so maybe you've got like another question coming up. You're welcome. I don't see any additional questions. Just one more. Yeah, good remark of Peter. It is totally possible that you can combine multiple cognitive services into one application, and that is like a typical situation I think that you would encounter. If you would think, for example, about maybe the things that I started off my presentation with. Remember the application that Microsoft built for the vision impaired. We are using a bunch of cognitive APIs combined into one application. So the first API that we are using is speech to text to actually allow that visually impaired person to talk, to give a command to a smartphone, to that application running over there. Then we're making use of the linguistic APIs to try to figure out what he or she meant with that command. Then we're using the vision API to actually look around and then describe what is on the picture. And finally, we are using the text-to-speech API to read out loud, for example, the description of the thing that we detected. So I still see Bruno typing in the chat window, but there's no question yet. I'm going to give him a couple of more seconds to finish that question. There it is. Do you use cognitive APIs already in LinkedIn, or are LinkedIn data source available if you build an application in Azure? For now, not yet. Well, not yet, I don't know. For now, no. The APIs that are now in cognitive services are not yet based on the LinkedIn data source. So they're disconnected. Maybe it's going to change in the future. I don't know. I don't have any insights in that, but it's separate. Yeah. Okay. In case there are no further questions, we finished almost perfectly on time. Still 2 minutes left. If you have any questions popping up around cognitive services or other topics that we're discussing in our webinars, feel free to reach out to us. And remember, we are running other webinars later on this week about IoT and machine learning. Peter, my colleague, entered our contact email address in the chat window, so feel free to send a quick email and we will be happy to jump into a call to get you started with the stuff that we have talked about. All the best of luck with your hackathon and hope to see you in the IoT webinar later on this week. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.